Hello, everyone. Welcome to AIRIE Ask. We thank you for joining us today. My name is Asamer McCoy. I am the residency coordinator for the artists in residence in the Everglades area. We first would like to pay respects to the indigenous people. We would like to pay respects to the Everglades National Park. We would like to pay respects to the organization and to all of its affiliates. Today, we have two amazing people on our AIRIE Ask. We have Kunya Rowley, who was our artist in residence in, oh my goodness, not in October. Oh my goodness, this is October. Oh Lord, September. It's been a long day, y'all. So got that out the way. How did y'all know my brain don't work? I'm an artist in residence in September. And we have Dr. Melvin Butler joining as our interviewer, so to speak. But this really is just a conversation between two amazing artists about their work, about Kunya's time in the park, and about their connection to land, about their connection to their artistry. And so I just want to say a few words about the two of these amazing folks. So Kunya is a Miami native. Kunya Rowley is a community activist. He's does social impact and he's an arts leader. He is the founder and artistic director of Hued Songs, a nonprofit that celebrates Black culture through artistic experiences, as well as the music access, arts, and culture manager at the Miami Foundation, leading the foundation's effort on making music education and the arts more accessible in Greater Miami. Kunya is a graduate from the University of Florida and is an alum of the New World School of the Arts Opera program. In 2017, Kunya was the recipient of the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation's Knight Arts Challenge Grant, which propelled the founding of Hued Songs. Kunya's artistic practice is fueled by his own sense of growing up feeling both culturally and ancestrally lost. His work, however, centering Black music and history, gives light to a path, a purpose, and a promise that originated many centuries before him and many miles from where he stands, yet he is still undeniably his own person. Since its founding, Hued Songs has gone on to produce performances across South Florida, providing a platform on which Black and Brown artists can be seen, heard, and paid. I am one of those Black artists that was seen, heard, and paid. Working to remove community barriers and helping to create more pathways to art access. Kunya is a member of the NAACP Miami-Dade chapter, as well as the GMCVB LGBTQ Tourism Advisory Committee. Through his work, Kunya seeks to build community through music and to be a conduit for accessible arts across a multicultural platform. Dr. Butler. Dr. Melvin Butler is an associate professor of music at the University of Miami, an ethnomusicologist with broad interest in music and religious practice of the African diaspora. He has conducted fieldwork on music in relation to charismatic Christianity in Haitian, Jamaican, and African American communities. In these transnational contexts, he interrogates the cultural politics of musical style and religion while attending to the role of musical performance in constructing collective identities. He has published articles and reviews in several scholarly journals, including Ethnomusicology, Journal of the American Academy of Religion, Black Music Research Journal, and Journal of Popular Music Studies. Much of his writing centers on the phenomenology of Pentecostal musical worship, how the transcendent becomes immanent through musical performance and the intersections of faith, ritual, memory, gender, and power. These interests fuel his concern with ethnographic representation and the ways in which scholars negotiate their identities in relation to various fields of supernatural encounters. He earned his PhD in ethnomusicology from New York University and a bachelor's degree in saxophone performance from Berklee College of Music. His book, Island Gospel, Pentecostal Music and Identity in Jamaica and the United States, is forthcoming from the University of Illinois Press. Without further ado, I present to you both, to everyone, Kunya Rowley and Dr. Melvin Butler. Hello, hello.
Good
My
evening.
goodness.
Hello.
It is so nice to finally be in space. Kunya, we miss you. We miss you. Kunya, I appreciated so much during your time in the park. You just jumped right in. You were ready to go. I wasn't even ready. And you were ready to go. We tried to pack in everything we could into that month. You made such a beautiful time being in the space. You created so many amazing things, and you even brought folks out there. And that's the real impact. I remember you telling me some of these folks had never even been that far out into Florida. And so the fact that you thought it not robbery to bring more creatives into the space, to learn, to educate, and do it as a community, I thought was absolutely fabulous. And I appreciate you so much for that. And Dr. Butler, I'm so thankful that, you said yes to Kunya. Kunya was like, I got this. Let me speak to Dr. Butler. I got this. Because you are an amazing and fascinating individual in the way that you look at music and artistry and how it connects us all. And so I want to kick this AIRIE ass off with talking about how the two of you met.
Sure, yeah. It's great to be here. Yeah, Kunya, would you like to start off?
Yeah, yes, I'll jump in. So thank you, Arsimer, for that introduction. Excited to be here in conversation. So I will share that so much of my work that I like to investigate is rooted in Black music and Black culture and identity. And I was, as I was thinking about what I wanted to explore over the next couple of years, I was like, it would be really cool to think about musicology as a path. And so certainly looking and exploring University of Miami. And when I saw Dr. Butler's bio and your body of work, I was like, oh my gosh, this is everything that I aspire to do and study and to explore and excavate. And so it was, and even in our conversation subsequently, I think they've just been really powerful. And so it absolutely felt like the right connection to have this conversation and being in conversation with you tonight. So I'm grateful that you said yes. Does that encapsulate it?
I think so. And I would just add that I'm really grateful that you reached out to me, because it's rare that I meet someone who is such an exemplary candidate for a study in ethnomusicology or musicology, the study of music, history, and culture. I mean, you're already doing, as I've mentioned to you, you're already doing the work of musicology or ethnomusicology. I think of that as, the study of people making music. And I find in your work such wonderful questions about the why and the how and the extent to which music is connected to all of these other cultural domains, and so I'm looking forward to this conversation right now. And if I may, I want to start off by giving you an opportunity to talk about self-discovery. And the reason I want to start that way is because in the introduction, I love this phrase that Arsimer mentioned. She said that you are undeniably your own person. And I so admire that and can identify that. But I also recognize that for so many of us, perhaps yourself included, the process of self-discovery is very much a process. And in fact, I came across an interview on YouTube that you did a few months ago, and you said that a big part, I'm quoting you here, you said, a big part of my artistic career has been shaped around sharing pieces of my story, pieces of my culture, pieces of my history through music and through song with the community. And so I would love for you to elaborate a bit on these pieces of your story that have led to this becoming undeniably your own person, and how that now fuels the art that you create and the projects that you undertake.
Wow, I love that. So I will, to answer that, I'll take a step back and say that part of what has fueled Hued Songs and fueled my own work was actually being really lost culturally. I don't know, some people can trace back their family lineage for years and decades and centuries, but I will tell you, the Rowley family tree is a small branch with a couple of leaves, and so a big part of that was I don't know a lot about like who my family is. And so I think what kind of started this journey was like, how do I begin to discover like who I am and like what my lineage is? And what I began to realize is like, as I didn't uncover, as I started to like realize like I was like, actually, I'm not going to find much, was my history and my work and who I am is a part of a much bigger picture. It is part of a long centuries, a lineage of ancestors who I may never know, but yet I'm still connected to. And so I would say like part of my sharing, the sharing of my work is this discovery and this process, which is still like a journey. I'm still trying to figure out like who that is and what that is every day. But I'm really, you know, what I've leaned into as this queer Caribbean millennial raised in the America, is that like we are all really multifaceted people, and so like it's been I would say cathartic for me and therapeutic for me to be able to explore that, but also to find other people who are like, I'm still trying to find those pieces of myself. And so it's been really enjoyable through Hued Songs and through my own artistic practice, to excavate that and to showcase that.
Yeah, it's so true, right? We are multifaceted. I mean, I'm a little older than you, probably a lot older than you. I mean, I'm 53 years old at this point, and which is hard for me to believe, but I still feel like I'm figuring myself out sometimes, you know. But at the same time, I guess I have grown more comfortable in my own skin. And maybe, I don't know if this is true for you, but it's kind of like accepting the complexity of our humanness and that we are maybe contradictory at times, or that we're all on this journey. You know, and I don't know if you find the increasing complexity comes into focus for you as you get older or not, or do you feel like
1000%? You know, I think it's interesting. I think whereas as I in my formative years, and I'm still forming, you know, I would try to like put pieces of myself in a box. I'm like, okay, I'm entering this space. And so like, I am only going to show these two sides of who I am. And I think that like, what I've realized is that like, it has been really important for me to be able to walk into spaces and like bring my whole self, like all of the many facets, because like we are really complex people. And I think that like, if I can't walk into a space and bring every facet of who I am and all of myself, and I don't want to walk into that space. And like, but like, it's something that you can't, it's hard to be able to do as a 20-something-year-old, and still even as a 30-something-year-old, to have that level of like confidence within yourself and all those many pieces to show up authentically.
Yeah, authentically. One time, someone told me years ago, they said, Melvin, you are the whitest Black person I've ever met. And that was like probably 20, 25 years ago. And I still remember that. It's kind of, it left a mark, so to speak. But I think my own wrangling with Blackness and my own racial identity has informed a lot of the work I do. And it's sort of, like you, I'm on this sort of quest for self-discovery, and it informs the research I do, the questions that I ask and whatnot. And in your case, this Caribbean component, I would love for you to say a little bit more about that, as well as your background in opera, right? Because this is something that is like, most people understand as being like very Eurocentric or Western or white even. And here you are, this person from the Caribbean, queer, you know, Black man, who now is doing all these interesting things with theater. So was that like a moment of cognitive dissonance for you? That like, what happened? How did you go from like being this opera person, or have you gone from it? Has there been a transition, or is it just more like inclusivity and you're doing all of it now? Like, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah,
that's like 3,000 questions I threw at you.
But I'm here for it. I'm here for every part of it. So first, say like, you know, I was raised by my grandmother, who is born in Mason Hall, Tobago, and it's interesting. You know, she was an orphan. She was raised by European nuns in the Virgin Islands, and then came to the US, first to New York and then to Florida. And so I think so much of like, but she is still like a Caribbean woman. And so like the way that she raised my brother and I is just through that lens. Classical music has always been a part of our lives. And so I started singing opera singing classical music in high school and then went to school for it. And what I found was when I graduated, my goal and my vision was to become, a famous opera singer, and I would go into spaces, I would perform in spaces, I would go to see works, and I would feel this deep disconnect. Because I would look on stage and I would see like there weren't many people who looked like me. But I would say like even deeper than that, like there weren't a lot of stories that I felt connected to. There weren't a lot of stories that were like mine. And so I will share that like what that propelled for me was I'm going to quit singing. I was like, I'm going to quit music. Like, I'm like, this isn't for me. The space isn't for me. This wasn't made for me. And it was when I had the opportunity to apply for the Night Arts Challenge grant that I was like, I'm gonna go for this. And selfishly, what I will say is that I applied to the Night Arts Challenge grant, and it was to create a concert series that was all about me, like very selfish. I was like, I'm going to create a concert series where I, Kunya Rowley, sing works by Black composers. And what I found after a couple of months and speaking to people was that there were so many folks who were looking for a space where they also could share about their own lineage and could also have a platform where they could be seen and to be heard and to be paid. And so it's become this collective of artists creating works that range from all of the complexities and shades around Blackness. Sorry, I also took a tangent, so I hope that answered like some of your questions.
No, this is fantastic. Yeah, it's when you find people of color in genres of music or the arts that are conventionally understood as not ours, it's so interesting to see how we negotiate those relationships between how we see ourselves and what we decide to represent on the various stages, literal and metaphorical, of our lives, right? So does this mean that you no longer sing opera or and that you have renounced that, or do you still, I'm just curious if you're still engaged with that at all?
I always joke, I say that I'm a semi-retired opera singer, but I still sing. And I very recently was in Hued Songs production in this past spring. So I think it will always be a part of me. And I think like I crave that and need that. But I'll say, it's really interesting. Part of what was interesting about coming to AIRIE was I think that a lot of folks think that like as the artistic director of an arts organization, that like it is like the most creative, like artistically fulfilling like thing ever. But actually like 20% of what I do is like creative, 25% of what I do is creative. And like I am grant writing and trying to get people to give me money and booking rehearsal spaces and making sure that artists like Arsimer show up on time to our rehearsals. I love you, Arsimer. And so what I really valued about AIRIE was this space to be complete creative and really like lean into that, because it's not often that like we have this space and freedom as producers to be our full creative selves.
Yeah, I mean, it seems I can imagine it would be a challenge to find the artistic play and creativity when you're a little bit more behind the scenes. I mean, maybe you have the power then to kind of curate and decide who gets to be showcased and foregrounded and staged, but it may be different from doing the work yourself of performing and creating the actual art.
Yeah.
What do you this quote from Nina Simone comes to mind, and I'm sure you've heard it before, but she says it's an artist's duty, as far as I'm concerned, is to reflect the times. And there's this one documentary where she's like really hammering this home. She's like, I don't think you have a choice. Like, how can you be an artist and not reflect the times? And I play that for my students, and I feel like here at the Frost School of Music, it challenges them, because people just want, like, sometimes I just want to sing, I just want to play my instrument, I just want to do my theater. Like, why does it always have to be so political and activist? So what do you think about this idea of art and activism and what Nina Simone says? And does that apply to what you do, and in what ways?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a great question. I was actually asked a year ago if I considered myself an activist.
Yeah.
And like I struggled with that, because I would say like on the surface level, I was like I create performances, but like I would say that what I realize is a couple of things. So in May 2020, as our country like navigated like deep racial and social like reckoning, like I grappled with a couple of things. And like thing number one was I was like, I'm not very good at many things, but I'm good at like, I have this platform through Hued Songs. And I think that like, I can do something. I can do something. And what it led to was our first Juneteenth experience, which is a celebration of Juneteenth and liberation, and like the commemoration of like Juneteenth, but also this acknowledgement of the many ways that we are still pushing and fighting for freedom. And then I think like the other thing that like I realized as part of our work with Hued Songs is celebrating like the many facets of Black identity and culture. You know, our first performance was entitled Spirituals and Orishas, and it was really about this intersection of like African-American like spirituals, but also like this, the influence of like African spirituality and like what that means. We did a performance entitled Dark Like Me, which we're going to reprise again in Broward. And it was all around the multifacetedness of like Black and queer identity. And so like, I think a big part of our work also is highlighting like Black joy, but also like highlighting the ways that like Blackness is not monolithic, and just how like what that means in terms of what we showcase and honor.
Yeah. It's fascinating work. I was studying the Hued Songs website and reading about all the incredible work that you are doing and have done through that. I mean, celebrating Black culture through artistic experiences that are rooted in music. And you got songs, spoken word, dance, all these different modes of expressive culture are incredible. So thank you for that work that you're doing. And I'm looking forward to learning even more about it. I was going to say too that I grew up in Kansas, right? So I was born in Wichita, Kansas, lived in Enid, Oklahoma for a while, but grew up in Kansas City, Kansas. And I kind of did grow up with a monolithic conception of Blackness. It was kind of like a binary, like Black people and white people. And when I moved to the to the East Coast, for me, the first time in my life being in Boston and then New York, and now of course Miami, it's like, oh my goodness, there's so many different ways to be Black, right? It seems to me that you are really uniquely positioned to grapple with a range of Black ethnicities and identities. And Juneteenth, I think of as like so quintessentially African-American. I mean, I learned about it growing up, but I know for a lot of people, that was a new thing. They didn't know anything about this holiday or the significance of that period. But with the Caribbean connections as well, I mean, it seems to me that you have just a multiplicity of expressions to draw upon, things to be to be excited about and to celebrate. How do you choose? I mean, how do you make sense of all this in relationship to your own upbringing, your own identity, here in South Florida, especially? Yeah. I don't know if that's a question you can even answer, but I would love to hear your thoughts on that, this multiplicity.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm gonna try. You know, it's interesting. My mother and I, we have these discussions all the time. So I call my grandmother my mother, but she raised me. So she is she is my mom. And so my mother and I have conversations about this all the time. And so first I'll say, like, when I first founded Hued Songs, I was like, Mom, why didn't we ever talk about Black culture and Black history like in our household? And she was like, she's like, I didn't grow up also talking about Black culture and Black history and Mike, like in how I was raised. And so it made me think about a couple of things. Like, first and foremost, that like, and now I realize I'm going off on a tangent, I'm going to figure this out. First and foremost, like that there is like a cycle that like it is important. Like if we aren't celebrating and amplifying and like teaching young people about Black culture and Black history from a young age, like I think there is, it's hard to like see yourself like amplified in the world. And so like I realized that for my mom as a Trinidadian woman, like it wasn't like we didn't talk about Juneteenth. Like I didn't grow up learning about historical like Black figures in the US. And so like it was a lot of that work that like I had to do on my own. And then I think it's really interesting when I found it, or when we started the Juneteenth experience in 2021, like I like to ensure that none of my work happens in a silo or a bubble. And so I tried to have, I was having conversations with folks in the community. And what I realized was that I was like, oh, wait, yes, like for a Haitian person, like there maybe isn't like a deep connection to Juneteenth. For someone from, I mean, because all of these countries though have, so for someone from Jamaica, like there isn't this connection. But what I think was important for me was that all of these countries, all of these identities have a liberation story. And there is, so like, that's thing number one. I think thing number two is that like, part of what we've tried to do and are thinking about as we produce performances, is how do we find ways so that like Black people across the diaspora see themselves in this performance. And I think at the core of it, it is about celebrating liberty and emancipation. I think B, I think it is around identifying that as Black people across the diaspora, there's still many ways that like we are pushing and fighting for freedom. And I think C, and I think, you highlighted this earlier, it's like finding ways to ensure that like we also are showcasing the complexities of Blackness in these performances. That like we find ways to incorporate, like at this last performance we had Rosie Gordon-Wallace, who's just a powerful curator and artist, and from Jamaica, being able to like tie that into her own work. How do we find ways to ensure that like we are also centering, because we are here in South Florida, centering what like Black identity looks like here in Miami? And so that's we're trying.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I have to say, I've been in South Florida since 2016, and it has been an adjustment, in part because I feel like Blackness is defined differently in some ways. And well, the racial politics are a lot different. Like whiteness also is different, and people of color are not necessarily marginalized in the same kinds of ways, right? So you could be white and Cuban and be very right-wing in your politics and support policies that seem anti-Black in some way, right? Yeah. Whereas in different parts of the country, I feel like people experience that differently. And so this is one of the things that fascinates me about this Everglades work that you're doing, is like, I mean, given your own position, your own identity, your own way of expressing yourself, sort of navigating the racial politics in societies where not everybody wants to be lumped together as Black people, right? There's a complicated relationship to Blackness, and certainly African Americanness, but even Blackness, right? And maybe you have some thoughts about this, but I mean, I'll just add this one little comment. The reason I bring this up too is that when I went to the Caribbean to do my own field work in Jamaica and in Haiti, and in both cases, I went kind of wanting there to be this like Black connection, like, hey, I'm Black, you're Black, we're all African diasporic folks. But not everybody was feeling that. They were like, no, you're American and we're Jamaican, or we're Haitian, right? So there was a way in which it seemed as though a kind of cultural nationalism trumped racial unity, right? The Haitian identity was more important, more relevant than a kind of shared Black identity. And I wonder if you've encountered that kind of thing in the diaspora, in the North American diaspora, in contexts like South Florida, where you have this sort of commingling of Black peoples who share common experiences, but also have some distinct ones as well.
Yeah. No, that's a great question, and the answer is like yes. I've certainly, like, it is important for me, and I realize this, that like as I have to practice what I preach, and that like when I approach folks across the diaspora, that like I center that, like, as I don't know what it is like to navigate living in South Florida or the world as someone from Haiti. I don't know what it's like to navigate the world as someone from Jamaica. And so like, I want to recognize that there are many things that like tie us together, but like there are still things that are vastly different. And it's interesting. So I had a similar experience that my husband and I, literally right before the pandemic, went to South Africa, Johannesburg, South Africa. And I would say, like, I was like, yes, we are going to Africa, we're going to the motherland. Like, I mean, this is going to be like, I mean, fantastic. And it's true. There is like, I have never felt more like American
Yeah.
than like going to a place like that trip and like surrounded by just the beauty of just so many like people who look like me, and yet still like there's a huge difference, and difference,
Yes.
but like also like, you know, rooted in a level of a different type of oppression and history and culture that I could never know, and I had to recognize that.
Yeah, yeah. I think sometimes there's an assumption, I think from within Black communities and from beyond them, that Black people are supposed to be unified, like there's been a moment in history when all Black people around the world were like all together, and now we need to come back together. Whereas the truth of the matter is, you're talking about thousands and thousands of different ethno-linguistic groups,
Yeah.
you know, in the motherland, in the African continent, that, you know, we talk kingdoms that were at war for, you know, for centuries or whatnot.
Yeah,
So,
yes.
and now we have this sprawling diaspora of Black people, and for political reasons, right, we sometimes do want to kind of strategically come together to fight, you know, some common enemies, right? White supremacy, namely, right? But we still have some significant differences, particularly in the context of a multicultural America, where people have been here different lengths of time, and the politics don't always coincide, and sometimes there are actual, you know, disagreements, and there's histories of that as well. So I'm still figuring all this out myself. But it's so fascinating to hear you talk about that.
Yeah.
I feel like I don't know if you want to say more about that, but I do feel like I should ask you about the Everglades, because I have to admit, like, when I first heard about this program, so artists in residence in the Everglades, I'm like, what are they doing in the Everglades? Like, what? I just imagine, like,
what are they doing? Why are they out there?
Like, are you like chopping through the swamp and like, what in the world?
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit. Like, what in the world? What is this all about? Why the Everglades?
So that's it's really fascinating to me. You know, I've lived in South Florida my entire life, and had never stepped foot in Everglades National Park, or down south. And so like I'll first like share that reflection. I was super intrigued, you know, when AIRIE put out the call for applications, and like one of the questions they asked, and I hope I'm wording it correctly, but it's like, how do we make the outdoors a space of belonging? And I think that for so many, it's interesting, for so many, like you would think that like being outside is like super accessible, but for Black and brown folks, like it is like elusive. It's remained elusive. And a part of like, and so anyway, I was really intrigued by that, especially as someone who's like not an outdoorsy like person.
Right? There's all kinds of jokes about like Black people going camping. Like, no, we don't.
Yeah, that's not. Yeah, that was never my ministry. And I was like, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to try. Right. So it's okay. So like, I'll first say that. And, you know, in preparation, I was just, you know, thinking about a couple of things. You know, I was reading Bell Hooks' Belonging, and it made me think about the fact that like our people have actually always been deeply tied to land, certainly like ancestrally, certainly from folks like folks in the South who worked in agriculture. And also like if we talk about Miami specifically, around Bahamian settlers, like who helped to, I would say like, who helped to forge and build Miami into what it is now, because folks were getting ready to like write off Miami because of all the limestone, and Bahamian settlers came here and were like, oh no, like this is how you build and use limestone to create a city. And so like there is just a deep connection to land already around like Black and brown folks. And so like it made me think about like, how do we equip? So like that's thing number two. And so like thing number three, to answer your question, I think was really valuable is that AIRIE says, you know, we are going to send an artist once a month, 10 artists over the course of the year to spend a month in the Everglades and to immerse yourself in the Everglades. It was absolutely incredible. I mean, I would say like for a couple of reasons. I think reason number one, the care with which the park, Everglades National Park, works with the artists. AIRIE helps to kind of support and champion the artists, was really valuable. And so like I felt like really welcomed in the space. To be able to have that much time. I think very often like we go to a park or we go to like a landmark and we've got to like try to rush and do everything within the 8 hours or the day that we're there or the weekend that we're there, and to have the time and space to be able to go at my leisure and to kind of create and explore was, I think, was really powerful. And so I spent my time there, as Arsimer mentioned, doing as much as I could to go on trails, to take the tours, to go walk through the slough, to go bird watching. And it was all about experiencing what it means and what the Everglades sounds like. What are the histories like seen and told and untold that are like in the land? And what does that like make me want to do in terms of just like creation? And so it was around creating original vocal soundscapes inspired by that time there.
Yeah, you know, we talk a lot about landscapes in our society, but the idea of soundscapes is equally important, right? The connections between sound and place. So,
Yeah.
oh, I would love for you to answer your own question. Like, what does the Everglades sound like? And how does that sound, however you imagine it, inform your own art?
Yeah. So when I going to the Everglades, I think what I anticipated the Everglades sounding like, and granted, I want to like acknowledge that I was there. I'm in September, which is, you know, it's off season. And so, which I think is, you know, I also value, but I think going to the Everglades, what I imagined going out into, you know, the swamp and going out into, you know, the airboat was that like I would be bombarded with this cacophony of sounds and things.
I thought you were going to say bombarded with mosquitoes. That's what I was.
Well, I was definitely bombarded with mosquitoes. They were very aggressive, especially in September, but it was fine.
Okay, good. Please continue. I'm sorry.
No, but I think that what I found really fascinating and interesting was that I would go out into these spaces or go on a trail or a walk or be out on a boat, and it sounded almost silent. Like it was like, it felt like there was like a deep silence. And then when you listened really, really closely, like there was a vibration and a hum, like that was like come like from like everywhere. And so like, I think that part of what it's been really fun to explore is like, there was always like the Everglades was always like talking and singing and praying and whispering, but you have to listen to it. You have to take a moment to like really like sit there and listen to it. And so I think it has inspired some of the soundscapes that I'm working on, and also like some of the music I want to curate by Black composers to kind of accompany that as well. So it was a really like an experience that I did not anticipate or expect in going there, but I really like enjoyed having to actually be really quiet and silent and like listen for what she was saying.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the Everglades is a she, huh?
I don't know. I mean, like, I don't want to, you know, misidentify the pronouns, but
right.
I think
they probably, right.
But yeah, just to listen to deeply, and I value that, because especially in a time and space where like we are like constantly moving around, trying to like move to the next thing, do the next thing, bombarded with sounds constantly. And so like I enjoyed the ability and the space to be able to say like, I'm gonna pause and I'm gonna listen.
Yeah, it reminds me of Murray Schafer, a composer who talked about things like schizophrenia, this sort of situation where sounds are increasingly displaced or disconnected from their natural environment, and that we've gotten away from just listening to ourselves, to our environment. I mean, nowadays we're so, I mean, I myself have my own my earbuds, you know, and we all kind of individually have our own little listening parties going on, but collective listening to the sounds right here on our campus at the University of Miami, the sounds of birds, the sounds of the fountain. And so you were in the Everglades. Were you disconnected? Did you have technology with you, like the cell phone and all of that, or was it like totally just only you and the environment?
Yeah, no, I had technology. I was not completely disconnected, and
Okay,
so
that's all right.
And I will also celebrate that the cabin. I was not camping. I was glamping. I was in a cabin.
Okay.
It had air conditioning. I really appreciate that. Thank you, AIRIE. And so, but I tried to make space for just being technology free when it called for it. I do want to highlight one other thing, you know, just about the exploration there was that, you know, our summer talked about this at the very beginning, but when I think about what was important for me being there, always, you know, my life is imbued with a couple different things. Just from my position, you know, my husband is a citizen of Cherokee Nation, and so it is our life is imbued with beautiful indigenous culture and Black culture, and so like it was really important. As I think about like what comes next in building this is honoring just the original settlers and stewards of that land, and what it means for our paths as like as Black people, indigenous people. Like, what is that path and those intersections? What do they look like, and what do they mean? And also like our past, our ancestry, like we're intertwined, and so beginning to think about that as well. How that manifests itself in music.
So powerful. And I know we're going to open this up to questions. I just wanted to sort of just add to that. I thank you for drawing our attention to this connection of human beings to the land. I didn't know about the Bahamian migrants, for example. And what comes to mind for me is the Mississippi Delta region and the development of the blues, and how that was so connected to the people coming to and from that part of the United States, right? And working the land and building up the levees and having to sort of like clear away underbrush and all of that. And so much music and sound is connected to land in this way.
Yeah.
So man, absolutely fascinating. I'm really happy to open up the floor for questions. If there are some from the attendees, or I don't know if we're opening up microphones to make that happen, or is it just in the chat? I think people can add them in the chat as well. Chat is disabled, it says. Oh, now it's on. Okay.
Ask away.
Yeah. I think we've got about 15 minutes, right? So
yeah.
Because I will ask you questions all day if nobody else does. But
you guys ask some questions. Listen, I was about to end this whole interview. Okay, why you tell all these people I'll be late?
Oh,
why? Kunya, you know my grandmama said, when you do right, no one remembers. When you do wrong, no one forgets. That's what my grandmama used to say.
I want to just acknowledge and celebrate that even late, I still really love our Summer McCoy. So just I want to let that be known.
Yes, that's awesome.
Does anyone have any questions? I have a question. Well, first of all, I just want to say this was an amazing and very transparent conversation. Dr.
We're just
Butler,
scratching the surface.
You started preaching, okay? You started preaching. I was about to turn my camera on and be like, listen, I didn't know I was coming to church. I did not know. So we have a question in the chat. Did you find songs by Black composers inspired by the Everglades?
Yeah, that is a beautiful, beautiful question. So yes, I think a part of like what I was thinking about, so two things, was did I find songs like that encapsulated like my time, like, or that encapsulated this idea of like land? Did I find songs like that encapsulated this idea of like of transience and of sound? And like the answer is yes. And so like I lifting up just beautiful songs by Florence Price, who is a Black composer, Leslie Adams and Creole Girl, Margaret Bonds. And so like, it was really nice to be able to like find ways. And then I think the other thing that was kind of interesting to explore was how songs, regardless of like whether they were inspired by the Everglades, but like how Black voices sounded in the Everglades. What did it mean to imbue the Everglades with Black voice and Black artistry? And so I spent a lot of time also just like, I'm sure the park rangers were not happy about it. Maybe they were, but like I would just sing outside on my back patio.
They loved it. They told us they loved it.
I hope so. So like it was really interesting to think about what it meant to create sound as a Black person and have it be left behind in the Everglades. And so that was also a big part of how I spent some of my days.
And that was from, I hope I'm saying this right, Elan, Elahn, Elan. That's a beautiful name. Yeah, and now from Joseph Cloud. When will we be able to watch what manifests from your time in the Everglades? The daunting question. When will it be ready?
Yeah. So
watch and hear.
Yeah. I would like to have a public live performance in February. We're going to talk about it. We are somewhere and we have to have the conversation. But the idea is that it will be a public performance happening in February at Everglades National Park. That I would have loved. No, I wouldn't have loved to have it, but like we could have had some type of public performance in September. But ain't nobody was going to come to the Everglades.
No. And I wasn't going to ask nobody. I'm telling you. So I'm being so real with you. I would have said, Kunya, that's cruel and unusual punishment. I don't stand by any of that.
No.
It is a different space in certain months. So, I was there in February and it was just, nice, breezy, and to hear people's different, perspectives and feelings as the months go on. Lola Flash is our artist in residence now. And it's just the rain now. Now it's a matter of like, Miami has the weirdest weather patterns in the world. And so Lola is a photographer. And so, weather, the daylight, transitions, all of that is so super important to your practice. But also, Kunya, it's a testament to how we have to change sometimes when it comes to our practice with the land. We have to change sometimes the conversation just because of how the land is affecting us. If we talk about on just societal levels, what we're going through, the George Floyd protests changed, murder changed so much of Black and brown artists' perspectives. And I should say white artists' perspectives as well. On a global scale, people had to change the way they moved. And a lot of folks realized what we talk about when we talk about, Black folks don't really do art for art's sake. We would love to just paint flowers, right? We would love it. We would love to just paint Starry Night. We would love that. But every time we do something, it is a story. It is a conversation because of how much we have to change our practices to tell the stories that are happening to us in real time.
Back to Nina Simone, right? Reflecting the times. I didn't even ask you about this, Kunya, but like things like environmental justice, climate change, and all of that as it pertains to the Everglades and the role of an artist doing this. I mean, this is also, I'm sure, at the forefront of your mind too, and probably all of the AIRIE artists.
Well, I love that you brought that up, and I think that really ties into also like how we honor and acknowledge just the indigenous stewards of the Everglades, and like how these our indigenous community, Miccosukee, Seminole, like they have always been stewards of the land and are also keepers of the water here in South Florida. And so like, how do we begin to like also like listen intently to like how like what they are saying to ensure that is deeply imbued in our work and also in our practice. So I appreciate you lifting that up.
We have another question when other artists came to visit you during the residency, what transpired?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, a couple things. It was really great because for some folks, like they also had never been to like the Everglades, and so it was kind of just also this idea. It was nice to be able to share in that experience with other artists. Um, B, I, as I mentioned earlier, I wasn't an intention when I first started the residency, but like it became one as I like progressed, was like this idea of like, what do Black voices sound like in the wind? What does it sound like against the trees? And so like I had artists come and just perform works, whether it was one artist came and just did some spoken word and poetry. One artist, sang. I had another artist, a friend, Kelly Kessel, who helped me. I bought a looper, and she helped me work my looper. And if folks weren't familiar with a looper, it is this electronic contraption that allows singers, songwriters to kind of create music with just like one tool. And so we created a variety of interesting songs. One was about mosquitoes. It's on Hued Songs Instagram. You're welcome to check it out.
Of course.
Joseph, my husband, he also was there for a week, which was really great, and just inspired just a lot of thought about like what the process could uncover and what it could mean, and the things I could leave behind in terms of artistic practice in the Glades. And so it was great because, and then I'll stop talking. I don't know what I don't know. I realize it's been such an interesting, humbling experience to realize that like I'm never the smartest person in the room. I'm never the most creative. I'm never the most talented. And I love that, because what it means is that like there's so much space and things that I'm uncovering and like learning in my own practice. And so like I really, really value that.
Wow. I did find that when you're there, you're in it, you're immersed in it. And the effects don't happen until you get back home. Like you don't realize how much it's impacted you until you're back in the city and back to the routine, and you find yourself driving and looking at like, I don't know, vines coming up from the highway, and you're like,
wow.
This
I imagine it would be a transformative experience.
It is.
Spiritual experience,
It is. I find that no matter what we have done, the land is always taking itself back, and always, how do I explain it? It's always curating itself too around us. Which is why I mentioned like the vines growing through, the highways and the walls. If you notice, through gates, if you notice like just random things, weeds growing up from street concrete. It's like that, how? And it's like, it's always constantly letting us know we're here, we're gonna be here. We don't know about y'all, but we're gonna be here. So, love it and figure out how to, play nice with the land, or
right. All the critters and geckos, and I mean, they were here before us. Right?
Yes.
I'm trying to tell my wife that when a gecko gets inside, she's like, no, we're on their land. Right?
Well, now respectfully, okay, Miami has some interesting wildlife that
iguanas,
has, come into the space. So I don't know about those.
But part of the reason I also think it would be really powerful and like spiritual for me is that I like, in Kunya, you alluded to this too, like the people who have been there in the past, the people who died in that land, like the voices of the ancestors seems like they would come into the fore. Like I hear some whisper, I'm like, who's that?
Yeah.
Somebody like who's buried here? Just like you kind of, it's funny on the one hand, but also could be deeply meaningful and spiritual when you start to realize and sort of absorb the history of the place. Yeah. And to sense that ways of bringing the past into the present.
Yeah, and I love that you've said that. And I know we're wrapping up. Last thing I'll share is that Everglades National Park doesn't have a deep a full annals of Black history, and so like we know that there was Black history in that area, but like it's just not a lot of it is documented. And so I think that like a part of what was really interesting to me as I would go out into these spaces was like what was that experience like for for Black folks, for like just like thinking about yes, being out there in September and navigating like the wilds of the Everglades, but also like learning to live in harmony and balance with that. And so I think that like a lot of it is like uncovering history that is, yes, like documented, but like also like imagining and like the inspired history of Black folks and ancestors in the Everglades. And so like I really appreciated like that freedom to be able to think through that.
Yeah, and I think we all stand to learn from this. I mean, the Everglades is, maybe we don't conventionally think of that as a very Black space, but man, I just appreciate you calling attention to that. And of course, this is a very sort of complicated history, and lots of different people have passed through, and I wish we knew more about this history, but it seems to me that your work is really giving us a way to use the arts as a lens to better understand how the past and the present relate, and what the arts can do to contribute to our understanding of these complicated pasts and presents and futures, perhaps. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for elevating voices, for sharing your voices with us. And I'm so thankful and proud of this organization that has taken the steps to bring in these amazing voices, these voices that speak to the whole of our communities. It is important that these conversations happen in order for us to be better humans, not even artists, not even, workers, humans.
Yeah.
And so I thank you, Dr. Butler, for your work and your practice, for going to church, for your transparency, for raising all the questions that we all need to be having with each other. Sometimes these questions are uncomfortable, but such is life, such is our time here on this earth, uncomfortable, but look at us. Look at us being our ancestors' dreams. Dr. Butler, okay.
Yes. Hey, thank you.
Kunya Rowley of Hued Songs and soon to be mayor, because, I just think you need to be the mayor. I've decided. If you want to start as an alderman, we can start there. I don't know if we even have any of those, but, start small, we grow big, run something. I appreciate every single one of you all today. Thank you, everybody that joined us. And please, 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 everybody that's watching, you can watch this video. We should have it up on the website very soon at AIRIE.org. And if you have any questions about the artist residency, please feel free to reach out to me. My information is also on the website as well. And please make sure you follow Kunya Rowley and Dr. Butler on their pages and support the work that they're doing. All of AIRIE, we need books. So we need books. Everybody on the board. So Dr. Butler, get it going. Okay. And
Okay.
Kunya, we look forward to your public activation in the park. It is going to be an event. I feel it in my bones, and I hope that every single one of you can make it out. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.